Namaskar all. This is Anil Kant Choudhary or AKC, bringing to you this Imitable Success Stories, a series of stories which I will share with you all. The first in that is related to a challenge of unpredictable and inconsistent service delivery for an important client. So let's see how I address this challenge, and hopefully you can benefit from it. So before I talk about the real challenge, let me give you the magnitude of the challenge. The client, it was one of the leading client globally, in top five in their respective industry, right? So you can imagine how critical it was for all of us, right, to make sure that whatever we do properly. The engagement was of a transformational nature. It was of a business critical system, which has been running for quite some time, but it was quite old and it needed a lot of new features, a lot of new technology to be inculcated, besides looking after some of the procedural improvement, right? So that is what we were looking at. The scope was related to multiple countries. Altogether, there were something like 35 to 40 countries to which it needed to be rolled out. Some countries alone, some two or three countries together sometime, depending on similarity of the local laws or the size of the business engagement in those countries and all that, right? So all of that was there. In terms of risk, yes, absolutely. This was a very, very important client for us because the client was getting a revenue of about 1.5 billion euro per month through this business critical system. So you can imagine if the transformation doesn't go well or if there's issues in that, then what impact it can have for the client. And if it is impacting client, it is going to have a big impact for us as well. So it was very, very risky for us. The reason why we had to face this challenge is that the previous country rollout, which was done several months back, there were a lot of issues there. I mean, to say the least, it was below par. Service, which we had to deal with that point of time. Not getting into what caused it, but it was something which was really not something which we are expected to handle. You know, so we were expected to handle definitely much better than that. So that was something the reason why this challenge was thrown on to us. The fallout, of course, is the business reputation, both for the client, because if their critical system is failing, the end user is not happy, then it is going to have an impact for the client. And of course, if it is for the client or their leadership, then it is going to have a big business impact for us as well. So the fallout was really steep, and the measure of success or failure was directly or indirectly what we were getting to hear from the customer, right? Sometimes the end user, sometimes the people with whom we used to interact, right? So yes, when we were facing this challenge of unpredictable and inconsistent service delivery between different country rollout, it had a huge impact on all of us, right? So that's the challenge which we looked at. Okay, so moving on to how we tackled it. As I mentioned earlier, the common approach for me has been always the sixth step, discovering the underlying problem, not looking at the just the symptom, but finding the root cause. Then trying to take the noise out of the system, because idea is to focus on the problem, not on something which is really not a problem. Uh, Learning from the past experience, trying to draw from that, right? So if there's something which I could pick out, so that has been my approach. So I looked at that as well. Jointly working out a practical solution with the team, with the client, other expert which we can involve in, right? Sometimes there were third parties involved, so we had to take them in confidence as well, and coming up with a implementation plan. And as I already said, it was multiple different countries, but then within a country rollout itself, we had to plan different aspect of milestone or issues, or how to resolve any potential risk and all of that. So we worked out the timeline of that. And finally, if anything could go wrong, we also looked at how we can identify that proactively. And if it goes wrong, then what step we can take. So here also we applied those common basic approach to identify and work on those limitations, and then come with a solution which we will implement for that country. Okay, so what limitations which we discovered? The first and possibly not a surprising one was we found that it was a disjointed team. And when I say disjointed, it was not just within our team. We had our on-site team, we had our offshore team. Within offshore also we had different program sites. One program working in one way, another program working in their own timeline and all of that. So that was there. There was also a disjointment between different stakeholder. For example, between client and ourselves, there was some understanding gap. There was also a bit of a challenge with the third parties. So there was some underlying issues in terms of how we can work together. So that we identified as a one of the major issues. Uh, Defensive leadership, definitely I don't want to blame that leaders were the reason for all the failure, but what I want to highlight here is that when something doesn't go well in the past, uh, leaders are a little more cautious in terms of believing what you're saying or what you're suggesting, right? So that is one. And secondly, if something goes wrong, then they try to find a solution rather than trying to say that this is something which could have been done in a different way. For example, if there's an issue which is having a joint ownership with client and ourselves, with the defensive leadership, you will find that the pressure is more on us to handle it, rather than requesting client to work together and find a solution. So, but yes, this will happen naturally if the past there have been issues. So there was a bit of a defensiveness in the leadership. Fear of informing about likely issues in the team. People, if they knew about something, they were a little hesitant, right? They didn't want to talk about it, because if they talk about it, people may question them that why it happened, and why did you not do it. It's typical mentality, and unless you get the right support, people tend to hide it, right? So people were a little apprehensive in sharing any bad news. So likely issues, even if they come to know about it, they tend to keep it under the wrap, trying to find a solution for that. The fourth one was an important one, very, very important in the scenario. We had some great members in the team, right? They were brilliant actually, technically, knowledge-wise and all that. But as a team, we were lacking the collective excellence. So while we had individual brilliance in the team, it was not a collective excellence. So as a team, we were not giving our best, whereas some individuals were really doing much better. We also had some metrics, some KPIs, but most of those KPIs were more like a lagging indicator. Things has happened, and get to know about it, and then say, oh gosh, this is something which is not looking good, right? And then we are trying to, based on those metrics, we used to take actions. We were having very few leading indicators which can indicate, things are going wrong, right? And how we can then take action before something goes wrong, right? So that was it. And the last one, I think it was a bit of a contractual, I would say. It was more like there were hardly any incentive for improvement. Uh, the team member were trying their best to deliver the work which was committed. And even if they found something which could be done in a better way, they were hesitant to take it to customer and discuss with them, because customer might come back and say that whatever is told to you, first fix that, right? Take care of that. Let's not deviate, right? So people were hesitant. There was no incentive, right? Even if it is something good, people were not incentivized to, bring those improvements. So these were the top 6 underlying limitations which we discovered. In terms of the changes which we brought in and which helped in terms of turning it around, the four key one I'm talking about here. First was to bring it a team bonding. And again, as in the past I have said, most of the time I have seen that when we take care of the basic things correct, the simple things right, it helps turn it around. And here also it was no different, right? So what solution we brought in, it may sound very simple, very basic, but this is what actually turned it around, right? And in most cases we see that it is helpful. So team bonding, um, we created a lot of informal connect with the team members, individual level, small group level, trying to get their understanding, trying to see what is working out, what is not working out for them, right? Trying to get their real feedback, right? As a person, as a team member, whatever they had, right? And also trying to celebrate some of the small successes. It could be birthdays, it could be anniversary, it could be somebody's blessed with a baby, those kind of things. Maybe we have a connect in a way where we can celebrate some of these success. So that weekly celebrations, collective successes helped in terms of improving the team bonding. And we also started projecting the group of members rather than individual, because as I said in the past, we had brilliant members, but then as a team we were not doing it. So whenever the team would do some great work, or even if one of them is doing better, the team used to get appreciation and we used to appreciate it. So that kind of created a little bit more strong bonding between the team member, and they were a little more open in terms of sharing their feedback and working together, enjoying the collective success rather than individual success. So that's the first thing which we brought in. The second thing which we brought in is to promote the excellence. Right now, I talked about the KPIs. We had a lot of lagging indicator, but then we brought in some leading indicator, which could indicate the potential business impact if something goes wrong. So this helped us to address the issue before it actually occurs, right? We also created individual service level objectives, which team members and particularly the senior ones were given, and these SLOs were aligned with the KPIs of the team, right? So for example, let's say if the quality of a review comment from a particular group is high, right, which helps the team overall in terms of improving the quality, this is everybody will go for it. But those kind of SLO was given to the leads, the team leads, module leads, and all that. So like that, individual SLOs were given even to the team members, in terms of how they can improve the quality of the coding, the standard, and all of that, right? So that we did. We also constituted a kind of a reward mechanism for identifying issues proactively. I mean, this was, as I said, was one area where people were a little hesitant. So we started appreciating, we started rewarding based on the impact of the potential issues which people detected, right? So that helped in terms of pushing team member to look at things which could go wrong later phase of the project. Okay, so this helped. The third thing which we did is in terms of anticipating issues. I already talked about rewarding for early issues detector, but we also started coming up with a potential list of likely issues, right? It doesn't mean that things are wrong, right? But it was more in terms of what if this happened, could it happen? If it happens, how do we address it, right? So potential issues, we started coming up with that, and then also coming up with a workaround and fixes for it. In some cases, getting a fix may not be easy all the time if it happens like that, but in those cases we we identified the workaround, right? How we can do that thing so that the business is not impacted while we try to work the larger solution, or permanent solution little later. And we also created a crack team. What we uh, did is that, all those issues, we try to club them, right? Group those issues depending on the similarity and all of that, and then created a crack team that if this kind of issues is coming up, it falls in this particular category. So these are the experts, these are the members who have worked on it, and they would be the one who would be contacted, and who can chip in and fix it, right? So those were the crack teams which was identified. And finally, we tighten the governance and reporting. I mean, again, this is very, very basic. Almost every engagement does it, but then how religiously it is done, how uh, honestly we implement it at every level, it makes a huge difference. So we tightened that up. We created a 3 level of governance: a daily, which is at the team member level or team leads level, and weekly, which was more as a manager level, and then monthly, which was at a next level general manager or director, depending on different organizations. So we put that. Within that, we created three categories of content. One was on the contractual, in terms of what was expected, what we are expected to do and all of that. And then architectural and operational. Architectural was also important because we were talking about transformational engagement. So if something goes wrong architecturally, if something is not working out, it's important to know it beforehand. Or if there's a dependency on some other piece of work which can create an issue, so we should be knowing that. And operationally, if something is slipping, some dependency is not sorted out, all those things. So we had 3 level, and also 3 type of challenges we covered. I will call it challenges. One was a risk, which was potential to happen. It has not happened, but there was a potential to happen, so we will definitely record it. And then issue, which was the risk which has already happened, or there could be sometime issue, may not be a risk, but there could be some other issue, right? And third was in terms of concern, which is not an issue, could be a limitation, could be a roadblock, could be a dependency, something like that, or could be even a softer aspect, maybe attitude, availability, and all that, right? So we had looked at all of this. So these are the 4 key changes, the basic changes which we brought in, and we could really see the improvement. In terms of the outcome, what we achieved was phenomenal. Immediate country rollout. The first country which we were handling, and as I said, the client was really skeptical in terms of how it will go because the experience was not that great of the previous country rollout. So, but when we did this country rollout, the new one, it was really much smoother. We had only handful of P1 incidences, right? And in those cases also, since we had proactively looked at what could go wrong and we had a workaround, so in most cases we had a workaround. And in 80% of these cases, these issues were identified even before the end user could identify it. So we ourselves kind of found out and then we worked on it. So client was very happy, to see it. There were a few issues, as I said, there were some P1s, but there were not too many, and they were handled pretty well. So that really helped client feel much more confident in terms of what we had done. And then we moved on to the next country rollout, where we had just one P1 incident. This was a much bigger rollout compared to the previous one, but here we could really strengthen further in terms of the experience of the past success. The team was more confident, the team was more better bonding, all those things were falling in place. So obviously the morale was much higher and we could really do better. This country, 95% of issues, or more than 95%, in fact close to 97%, were identified proactively, and we got a customer satisfaction of 9.2 out of 10 possible. Year back it was somewhere around 5. So you can imagine, the kind of improvement this two country rollout made on the relationship. And then it was a journey on which we went on. The team was confident. We worked on those strengthening those basic things and continued delivering it. Next was a 3 country rollout. We didn't have a single P1 incidence there, and the P2 incidences that dropped by as much as I think it was dropped down to about 40% of the previous country rollout, right? Despite the fact that it was a 3 different country rollout. Again, the issues were detected proactively, and the CSAT improved further from 9.2 to 9.5. And then finally, next one was 7 country rollout. We had no P1 incidents. The P2 dropped down further, down to about 10% level. More than 98% of the issues were detected by ourselves. CSAT improved further to 9.7, and in fact, client was so happy that at the end they announced a bonus for the team, right? So it was a huge turnaround. So I would say, if I look at in terms of where we started and how we ended, it was a huge turnaround, and outcome was so satisfying, right? So that's a success story I wanted to share. If you think this is something which kind of connects in some way, if you are facing some similar issue, or if you have faced some similar issues in the past, you have done something, or if you have some similar challenge where you need some suggestion, some advice, do share with me. My mail ID is given at the bottom. Connect with akc@gmail.com. Do drop me a note, give me a message, share your experience, and if there's anything where you need my input further, I can really help out on that, right? I hope you like this success story. I will bring other success story as we go along in this, and I hope you will benefit from this, right? So thanks for listening, and thank you all. Have a great day, and have a great project and service delivery ahead. Thank you. Bye bye.